Good morning, friends. I wanted to discuss today very briefly a concept that I can best define as an integrated approach to treating COVID-19, to taking care of the COVID-19 infection and virus. It's not anything revolutionary. It's more of a concept that I think it's important for us all to understand so that we can have a better approach and attitude towards different methods and techniques and treatments that are proposed or used against COVID-19. And in order to do that, I want to use an analogy. Any analogy has its benefits and its limits, so I want to acknowledge upfront that it's not a perfect analogy, but I think it is one that will be very helpful in many ways. And that is the analogy to what beekeepers do when they deal with the Varroa Destructor. You see, beekeepers have been plagued for several decades now, both here in the United States and around the world really, by a parasite, by a mite. What you have in the picture here is it's an enlarged picture of the Varroa Destructor. This is a mite, a small insect that attaches to the honeybee's body and sucks out the vital juices out of it, but more damagingly, when it multiplies, it lays its eggs in the same cell where the bee brood grows, as the larva becomes an adult bee, and those baby mites develop together with the baby bee and transmits to it viruses and takes food away from it. And so those new bees that are born from those infected cells are a lot weaker and frail, and sometimes they have deformed wings and they can fly and so forth. So it turns out that beekeepers to this date, they don't have an effective treatment that would be able to kill completely, to eradicate the Varroa Destructor. And one of the main reasons for that is that the mite itself is an insect, just like the honeybee is an insect. And so if you use an insecticide to kill the Varroa, you're going to kill the honeybee also, and that's obviously not a good solution. So what beekeepers around the world have resorted to in recent years was what is called an integrated pest management technique, which involves a variety of techniques, a variety of methods of treatment that involve, as you see here, a whole layer of different systems that can be classified as cultural, such as cultivating stronger mite-resistant. This is an exaggeration. There's no, today that I'm aware of, a stock of honeybee that is completely mite resistant. But there are some that are more resistant than others. The Russian strain of honeybees, breed of honeybee, for example, tends to be more resistant. Or breaking the brood cycle, taking the queen away for a while or caging it so that those brood cells where the mite multiplies get disrupted, and you interrupt the mite multiplication cycle. Or mechanical methods such as removing the brood comb. It turns out the mites like the brood cells a lot, the drone brood cells a lot better than regular bees, because drone brood lasts longer and they have more time to mature in those. So beekeepers have put special frames with brood comb only, and then they remove them before the brood hatches, and with that they remove a huge load of mites. And then they go to agents that are damaging to the mite, but not so damaging that they also kill the honeybees. And those include oxalic acid or essential oils or formic acid, which is something that other insects such as ants produce. And so it can be used in certain concentration under certain temperature ranges and so forth to drive the mites down on a sticky board where they get stuck and can't get back up again, or even kill some of them. At the same time, the bees don't like it, but they can go out and come back in and things like that. And at the very top are the most aggressive chemicals that are, there are a couple of them, Aproach and some others, that are killing the mite, and yet they are not as strong as to kill the bees. Problem is, if you use exclusively those, you develop resistance over time and things like that. So the main idea here is, the reason I wanted to present this to you is that when you have a condition like this Varroa mite that damages the bees, but you don't have a single treatment that is able to take care of it under all circumstances. You know, what I presented before, some are good when there's no brood, like the oxalic acid is great when there is little or no brood early in the season, for example. Others are great for when there is brood in the cell. Other treatments are good when there is no honey to be collected, and so forth. In the same fashion, when you have a virus like the COVID-19 virus, where we have a situation where we don't really have a completely effective treatment that is able to completely eradicate it for good from the population. Now, the vaccine is a notable difference from this analogy. For the Varroa Destructor, we don't really have an effective vaccine. We do have one for the human population, even though it's not perfect. So in that sense, the analogy still stands, in the sense that the vaccine, as we have it now at least, is not going to be able to completely eradicate the disease from the human population, even if we were to realize our pipe dream of vaccinating 100% of the population everywhere in the world. So in that, being realistic, what that means is that we are in a situation where we have to use a combination of methods, from lifestyle changes, you know, at the base of that pyramid that I showed you for treatment of Varroa Destructor, where those cultural lifestyle things, you know, where you want to eat healthy, to exercise regularly, to lose extra weight, to sleep adequately, to think positively, all those things that are good for your immune system are essential to make it through the disease if you get it. But at the same time, there are other levels, you know, that you go above one level on top of that. And you have, you know, if you get sick, you go to the hospital and get treatment for the condition. If you are not sick enough to make it to the hospital, you can do things at home, you know, anything from hydrotherapy to, you know, some places like India is distributing a packet of different medications, and, you know, mask wearing is another mechanical method, just like for the honeybees, they have mechanical tools to prevent Varroa infection. The mask wearing, and I'm going to do a video soon on the efficacy of that, because some of you have brought up that study from Bangladesh and wonder whether it's showing much of a benefit at all or not, and in fact it is. And other measures, you know, such as you know, I mentioned hydrotherapy. That's a really helpful method that few are aware of. You know, everybody's thinking hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin when it comes to out of the hospital. And while there might be something there, especially for ivermectin in terms of maybe reducing the time to a negative PCR, the reality is that other measures in the outpatient setting are actually more effective, and they have more evidence behind them, including, for example, taking vitamin D and maintaining a blood vitamin D level that is adequate for protection. And beyond that, you have then the vaccine, which is the most effective tool we have to date against this virus. But it all works in conjunction with each other, so it's counterproductive, and that's the main point I wanted to drive home today. It is counterproductive for any of us, whether we are healthcare providers or people who just think and look online for various ways to combat this virus. It's counterproductive to think in a unilateral, oh, I just need this agent, it's ivermectin and nothing else, it's better than vaccine, it's you know, this great thing, or fluvoxamine, which actually tends to show more promising data than ivermectin currently. It's not productive to think that way. It's much more effective when, again, we don't have anything that's 100% effective in all circumstances everywhere. It's much more productive to think in this package integrated management fashion. And if we do so as a society and as individual, we have a much better chance of achieving success. And that was the point I want to make today. And I thank you for watching this to the end. And I welcome your comments as always. Until next time, stay healthy and stay wise, my friend.